Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast.
Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here with another Tuesday edition of Oilers Live. We've got some great guests on the show. We've got Mr. Lowetide himself is making an appearance, so to speak. The circular L is making an appearance. We'll hear. Well, let's just say
That's what I look like.
that's what he looks like. Let's just say we'll hear.
L.
Face made for radio.
Did you say circular L or circular owl?
Yeah, well,
We can't insult
well,
our guests immediately here.
Well,
I'm out of here.
we'll hear from him later. And Mr. Bruce McCurdy from the Cult of Hockey. And of course, Lowetide's from the Athletic. And then I guess I've been calling him my associate host now, Mr. Dash in the Park. Welcome, everybody. I mean, it only took 5 seconds before it got off the rails. So welcome to Alan and Bruce. Welcome, guys.
Good evening, man.
Hi. Is this just me, or is it a little late to start this?
It
You know,
might have been.
like I'm old,
It could
You
have been
know?
a little bit late. Yeah.
and McCurdy pissing around. I don't know if anybody said anything yet, but we were like 10 minutes late because of Bruce.
It's true. I was writing about Ryan McLeod, and the clock was ticking away merrily up there, and I was sort of focused in on my new news that I was actually covering. When you know it, right on the night that we got this scheduled. So, you guys, you know where you rank, right behind Ryan McLeod.
Now,
I'll take
Bruce.
that.
Bruce,
That's a good spot.
do you
Yeah.
know Lowetide?
Fourth
Do you
line
know
center.
Lowetide, Bruce?
Hmm?
Have you met Lowetide before?
Oh yes,
No,
yeah, we were friends.
we Bruce and I see Bruce and I, we're not dating, but we see each other enough that you could make that assumption.
That's excellent.
People say the same thing
Bruce,
about Michael
Bruce
and
is
I.
Bruce is a great guy, and he's a wonderful company, and I am honored to consider him a friend.
Well,
And he did until today feel the same way about me.
Likewise, I'm sure.
I really do appreciate you guys joining us today. And Bruce, you already brought up probably the biggest headline of the day, at least for Oilers fans. Ryan McLeod signs a 2-year deal for $2.1 million. Bruce, you just finished the article on it. Why don't you give us the background and any thoughts? Start us off.
Yeah, well, I'm still writing it actually, but I'm working my way through it. It's on hold while we do this podcast here, but it's mostly substantially complete. And the Oilers got a pretty good player here, and the important thing is they got this deal done before it went to the arbitration process, and I think it's important because this guy's been jerked around a little bit. 2 years ago at the start of the year, he got sent down to the minors, not because he failed to make the team, but because he had a waiver exemption. Whereas guys like Tyler Benson and what was the big winger, Brandon Perlini, that came in from Arizona, they didn't have a waiver exemption. So they were going to get the first look before the Oilers had to waive them, no matter what McLeod did. So he spent, 3 weeks in the minors to start that season that he really didn't deserve. And then last year, after his contract ran out, he spent the entire summer waiting for his renewal. And basically, I think the two sides just agreed, let's see how much money's in the kitty an hour before training camp starts.
Yeah.
And the hope was that there would be some kind of shuffling of the deck that would, spring loose an extra couple $100,000 somewhere. And it just didn't happen. And so he wound up signing for the very peculiar sum of $798,000. And you would think, well, why not 800? And why not 800 is that they couldn't have fit him or they couldn't have fit somebody else on the team at the start of the year. It was that tight. So he took one for the team last year, and he's very, very much entitled to think that he did. And then he very much outplayed that just under $800,000 contract last year. And so he went down the same arbitration process that we saw last year with both Kailer Yamamoto and Jesse Puljujärvi. And in those cases, Holland got a deal done before it ever went to the arbitrator. And I was convinced he would avoid arbitration at all costs with McLeod, just because he has already kind of jerked this guy around a couple of times. I mean, you take him to arbitration the third year, and you get in a courtroom setting where the team is saying, well, he didn't score in the playoffs. He only got one goal in his last 17 games last year. And you just sort of go through his flaws. And this is why we're only offering him this much compared to what he's asked for. They got to do it. And yet that can really harm a relationship. I've heard some really bad stories coming out of arbitration cases that, left the team and player a little bit at loggerheads. So far better to get it done, and certainly Ken Holland's style is to get it done, to do things by consensus and not by some kind of forced issue. Even as, last year, technically, I mean, McLeod was forced to take that low ball price to make everything work out. And I think probably a promise was made. Well, I think they have treated him well. 2 times 2.1 is a nice deal for a 23-year-old forward with 20 career goals.
Yeah.
They're betting on him continuing to improve.
And that's roughly what was expected in arbitration, I'd say, right? That 2.1, maybe 2.2 if he was lucky. Bruce, just a couple things you said there. I'm curious if you could think of one thing that, like, you seem pretty high on McLeod, which is good. I like the player myself, but what's the thing you think he brings, the most tangible thing he brings to this Oilers lineup?
That he brings?
Yeah.
A constant dose of speed. Ryan McLeod is so fast that he impacts team speed. The team is faster because he's on it. It's like significantly faster. And it's, that ability to wheel. I've often joked about McLeod, and I often talk about hockey and football terms. And McLeod is great carrying the puck between the 20s. But when you get him into the red zone, that's where he starts to encounter some difficulty. So, he's still got growth to undertake as a player. I think there's several things he needs to improve still. His face-offs. He needs to do a little better job at getting inside players on the defensive side of the puck, not being outside the danger man and the net. He's got, I think, just toughen up a little bit more, and he has made progress, but it's still a work in progress because he hasn't made enough of that yet. And he also, to achieve his full potential, which is plenty high, needs to just settle down a little bit around the net and learn how to calm down and finish plays as opposed to panicking and shooting when the chance comes, or making sometimes weird decisions to pass when he has wide open nets or stuff, because it's almost like the game is almost a little bit, his brain hasn't quite caught up to his feet, is maybe one way to put it. And that's, it's not intended as an insult. His feet are damn fast and his brain's got plenty of work to do. But I do remember, with considerable pleasure watching a guy named Glenn Anderson come into this league 40 years ago with the equivalent level of speed as McLeod. He made the team faster. And when he came in, and when he had a reputation from university, from Canadian Olympic team, of being a little bit of a plumber, and it only took him about a year. And then he suddenly, well, not suddenly, but he developed the skill for stopping at the edge of the crease instead of skating by and then having the rebound go to nobody, or the ability to hold the puck for that extra second as he went across the crease and then lifting it over the goalie. You don't have to just slam it in. There's other ways you can do it. And you'd like to think that, these are skills that can be learned by players. And should he take those kind of steps, I mean, this guy could be a really terrific player. I think there are limitations, but by raw skill with the size, the speed that he's got, he's got a lot going on. So it's a very good bet for the Oilers at this point. And 2 years was essential.
Excellent. Yeah, I completely agree. 2 years was essential for this deal. Lowetide, your thoughts on this deal? And then, another thing that Bruce talked about was, of course, the fact that McLeod really earned this money, having taken a bit of a bath on his last contract for obvious reasons. This is something that's kind of come up with you recently, I'd say. In fact, even in maybe your recent article on lowetide.ca, where you talk about players really, they have every right to take the contract that they negotiate. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and then I'd love to hear as well your thoughts on what you think McLeod brings to the team.
Yeah, I don't want to, but I find myself writing about Darnell Nurse a lot because he's a lightning rod player, and there's always a sense that for some reason Darnell Nurse is selfish or should have taken less money.
Stop.
And I look at it like, if we were in that boat, or any other hockey player, if you're going to be that critical of Nurse, then you should be critical of everybody. The idea is you take the money that's there when it's available, because your career is, relatively speaking, very short. And I think in the case of McLeod, I agree with what Bruce said. I think Ken Holland felt there was some, not indebtedness, but maybe some generosity there, or at least they bit the bullet on the McLeod side that they wanted to make up for a little bit. This is a little high, 2.1, but it's not like he doesn't deserve it. He scored 0.84 goals per 60 at 5-on-5 this year. That's a pretty good number. And he did it not playing with the big gunners. I've always wanted to see what he could do for 20 games with, Leon or McDavid. I don't think he's going to get it for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's not that physical big guy that they often have on the wing. And also because he, quite frankly, is a pretty darn good third-line center. Mm-hmm. I worry a little bit about his shooting percentage this year. It was like 15%. That's a little high. But I like that he is going to the net more. And I also think that he's, the game is slowing down for him to the point where he can get open and he can make plays, and he does score more goals than he did because of it. But as Bruce said, this is a process, and he's not there yet. I think he could be a 20-goal scorer more than once.
Do you ever see, do either of you ever see this guy maturing to a top six player? No?
I think his speed means that he's going to be around the game at a high level for longer than players of his talent normally would. His career arc. Yeah, very good comparable. So, but I also think that he's going to. I mean, I think he could have a Todd Marchant year. Remember the year he played on the top line and he did really well. But I don't think McDavid and Draisaitl would be here if he's having that year, because he's always going to be the third line center with those guys in front of him.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Cogliano's, you're right, Dash. That is good speed wise. I always, he needed to change his game, right? Maybe that's the way McLeod prolongs his career, is by changing his game somewhat, being more of a checking guy or whichever. But he just doesn't have this heaviness.
As much as changing his game as there was just accepting a role. I think this is a lot of times you grow up in junior and you score 100 goals and you get there and you swallow some pride and realize you're going to be a third line center. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like I'd take $2.1 million a year to do almost anything. I think ultimately, playing up with Lowetide, with McDavid or Draisaitl, like Lowetide mentioned, like I like him in that third line role. I like him in that bottom six. If we're going to start pushing guys up to the top six, then it should be the Dylan Holloways and the guys that were drafted to be in that position. And then maybe we get so much strength on the wing, we can push Nuge to the 3C and have McLeod as a 4C. How great would that be?
Yeah.
Why do you hate Ryan Nugent
That's the
Hopkins?
depth.
I'm so glad you
If
brought that up.
you want to stack center on the depth chart, that's the way to go. But
Yeah.
you can ask Alan, for instance, Mark Pouliot, how he took full advantage of being asked by Craig McTavish if he wanted to become the next Guy Carbonneau. And saying, Pshaw, I want to be the next Mark Pouliot and score 50 goals.
And take offensive zone penalties.
And lollygag back to the bench.
And bad line changes with 5 minutes left in the third period at Montreal. Yeah.
This is the Pouliot show tonight, or what?
I do remember Matthew Owanek asking you at your book signing, why is Marc-Antoine Pouliot your favorite draft pick of all time? Or who is your favorite draft pick, and why is it Marc-Antoine Pouliot?
Did I mention he's a big fan of the show, or used to be? Yeah.
He had a chance. He really did have a chance. Well, it's in the book, but he had a lot of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
He really
for
did.
sure. So, back to McLeod, the one thing I do love about McLeod, and I think, 2.1 is fair. I said this last year, I'll keep saying it, is, and this goes alongside the, play him 20 games with McDavid or Draisaitl kind of comment. I'd like to see him play 5 games with McDavid or Draisaitl just to, stay in that sort of role and be able to understand what kind of pace those guys are playing at. And the reason being is to me, McLeod's been a really essential player in terms of being able to play up and down the lineup wherever you need him. And he's one of the few guys on the team that has the speed to play up and down the lineup, bringing the speed to the team. So for 2.1 million, you got a guy like that if a player goes down and you need him to play 3 to 5 games up in the top 6, then I'm happy with that.
The Oilers back in the day, and Bruce will back me up on this, they would run every once in a while, it would, Don Ashby is the name that came to mind, but they'd run Gretzky and Curry with somebody else or slide somebody up who was having a hot streak, Pat Hughes. And all of those players, I think, improved because of that offensively, because they had that opportunity. And a guy like McLeod, he has such tremendous speed. If he could just be a little more capable or able with the puck on his stick, it could be a big difference. So the idea of putting him on the line for a little while is a good one. It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, he has the potential of being, the defensive conscience of a good line. He's got to still, I think, work on his defensive game, but he's trending in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to have a guy with the versatility that can play left wing or center, that he can play 5-on-5 or penalty kill or even power play. He's got a lot going on as a player, a lot of different ways he can contribute. But I like you see him. I think 3C is his calling, and you look at his line mates. Here's the guys he played with the most last year among Oilers forwards. It's 22-23. Warren Fogle, Jesse Puljujarvi, Derek Ryan, Dylan Holloway, Matthias Janmark, Kyler Yamamoto. And only then do you get to Zach Hyman, with 80 minutes that he played with him and almost 600 without him. He barely played at all with the top players. And yet he chipped in at, was it 1.7 points per 60?
Yeah, I think
That's
it was
5-on-5 and
a little high. Let me look at that. It was
5-on-5.
186. 186.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that even strength or is that 5-on-5?
5-on-5 is 186.
Oh, wow. Okay. Even better than I thought.
Yeah, he had a lot of first assists too. 0.75 first assist.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's all this talk about McLeod. There's the other side of this story, which is the Bouchard signing. What does this mean? So if we go, my favorite guy, of course, and a guy that I've had on the program a few times, Hart from Puckpedia. He put out what it meant. Let me just find that tweet. He's really great, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know.
Does essentially Bouchard not just kind of have to do what McLeod did last year and take what's
So
left?
here, let me finish here. So
there's
Puckpedia says after signing McLeod for $2.1 million, it's $4.28 million projected cap space with 20 players on the roster. If Bouchard signs for $3.5 million or less, Edmonton can fit a 22nd player on the roster. If he signs for more, can fit max 21 players. So, I guess Lowetide, let's start with you. I mean, your thoughts on this Bouchard? Like, do you have any sort of thought in terms of what we'll see for this contract?
I think what you would want to see is something less than 4. If you could do, I mean, I don't know. You mentioned the Hart numbers. If you could get him at 3.7 or 3.65, I think that allows you to put Lavoie on the roster if he makes it. I think the outer marker is 4, and then maybe 3.6. I might be. McCurdy's really good at this, but I think between 3, 6, and 4.
Okay, McCurdy.
I pegged him at 3.75, and when I say pegged, it's just more. That's a word that it's a cribbage word actually.
Oh no, I'm not doing this. Damn it! You start a show at 9:30, and this is what you get.
Late night internet. Look out, folks. Anyway, I compared him to the two guys that just signed, Bowen Byram and Keandre Miller. And they both signed within like $1.50 one another. I think right around $3.85 million. And to me, the two of them at that level makes the case that Evan Bouchard should be no higher than where those are. Those two guys both played 22 minutes a night last year. Evan Bouchard played 18 and a half. And time on ice is that, cases that do go to arbitration, which his won't because he's not eligible for it. When they do go to arbitration, time on ice is a huge figure. Games played, time on ice, boxcar stats. He just played more or less 85% of the minutes that those two guys did. And they both scored more points per game. And Miller scored more points, period. And neither one of them was like the number one guy on their power play. I mean, geez, they had Cale Makar on one team and Adam Fox on the other. I don't suppose there's much need for the other guys to do a lot on the PP. And to me, it just sets an upper limit. Like I can't think of an argument that says Evan Bouchard should be paid more than Keandre Miller next year.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the only argument is if he signs a different kind of contract that's for a longer term, which obviously he won't or can't at this point. And I just don't see it as, I just think it's a real strong line in the sand that the Oilers have to play.
There's no offer sheet coming either.
Good players, first round draft picks, getting paid by other teams, and we're prepared to go in that neighborhood with you. But why should we go into 4.2 range when they're getting 3.8? And I mean, people might say, well, Bouchard was trending great at the end of the season. That's great. It's all good. The playoffs were good. But they pay contracts based on the platform season. It's not the platform 2 months or the platform 6 weeks after the trade deadline. It's the whole season. And Bouchard was, frankly, quite poor for part of it. And he turned things around nicely in the third quarter, but on the third pairing with Broberg. And then he came on red hot once they got the right partner for him at the end. And great, he trends well, and they may have to pay him big time down the road, but I think they should be able to contain him at this point. It's somewhere around that 3.75 range. Offer him $3 million the first year, 4.5 the second. That's the maximum you can do for backloading a 2-year deals, 40-60. And then he's got the higher platform to negotiate from next time around. You can do things like that, but I unless they're really going to go, 4, 5, 6 years with this guy, and I just don't see how that's even possible. They'll be doing well to get him for 2 years, and one. If he says, "Oh well, I'll take this figure for 1 year," then that's trouble for next year. So again, as with McLeod, you really want a 2-year deal.
How does that work, Bruce? I'm not familiar in terms of how the cap works with that. If they do 3 this year and then 4.5 the next,
Mhm.
what's the how's it go against the cap? I thought that they
3.75.
Yeah,
It's an
3.75. That's what I
AAV is
thought.
the
Yeah, yeah.
average annual value
Yeah.
so the the average of the 2 years in this case, but it can be several years. But it used to be they get these really ridiculous. They get 12 million in the third year, then they'd have 8 years at the tail end of the contract worth $1 million each. And so they really tightened that up. So they said that these numbers have to relate to one another. You can't just
Yeah.
have this.
And so the benefit to the
really
backloading is the qualifying offer, right? Is that
Yes, yeah. His qualifying offer is the platform season, which is so it would just be the salary for the 1 year. That's why you saw guys like DeBrincat and Timo Meyer that had these phenomenally high, like $9 and $10 million um, uh, qualifying offers, because they were in under the old system, and where they could really, really dial it up on the last year of the contract. Whereas now, like say, with a 2-year deal, it's 40, 60, or somewhere in between. You can't go any more than that. You can't go 2 in the first year and 8 in the second year. You just can't do it.
So, Dash, I mean, you and I have talked about this at length on and off air. Your thoughts on Bouchard in terms of, and we'll go around the horn on this, but what's Bouchard's importance to this power play on this team?
Yeah, I think that's a key point to bring into this, right? I think, like we talked about McLeod going to arbitration, and if I was McLeod, I might want to take Darcy McLeod in as my lawyer, given some of the facts that he's put out there with him. Now I know Bouchard wouldn't have arbitration, but he has an agent, and if I'm that agent, I'm probably arguing that, yeah, Bruce, you're right that there was a season that he did partly poorly in, but I would argue that there was a Sandsbury season that really everything kind of went very well from that point on. And the playoffs didn't just go well; they were record setting. So I think the 1 or 2 year deal is obviously what's gonna be the key in this. I think 5, 6, 7 is a pipe dream at this point, as Bruce said. I think it's gonna be 1. If it's 2, that's fabulous, because no matter what, he's a deal on that second year based on what he should produce this year. Tying into that segue, Michael, what he should produce this year. Well, anytime you're the quarterback on the power play with 97 and 29, like we've seen what he did. Everybody thought, oh, geez, Barry's gone. What's going to happen to the power play? Well, all it did is get better. But I know where you were leading me with the question, and Boucher's probably the 5th most important person on that power play. I think everything flows through Nuge. We all know what 97 and 29 does. And you need that net front presence to make sure that, you can make it all work. So we've seen it work with Barry. We've seen it work with Bouch. Could it work with Nurse? I don't know.
It worked with
but I think we're going to have to.
Too.
Yeah, exactly. So I see what you're saying, Michael. And I don't know whether they'll be able to argue that. His agent's going to say he's got 80 points in 82 games this year.
Yeah, you can't argue it. There's just no way to argue it, especially if it goes to arbitration. Alan, I can hear the water running.
That's my humidifier, boys.
Oh, okay.
You were supposed to mute when you flushed.
I'm just saying, it's there. It's building up.
It's building up. You're you're a stats guy. I mean, how does that look in terms of Bouchard, versus Barry, versus how important he is to the power play? Does this power play continue to be the best power play in the league with or without Bouchard? Could Darnell Nurse sub in? And how does that play into this contract?
Well, I think the key for Bouchard is what hasn't happened, and we're late now. There's no offer sheet. We always talk about it. He doesn't have any rights, really. I think that the thing that was most encouraging about Bouchard, I think he's the last impact player of the McDavid era that they're going to draft. And they don't have any more money to spend on anybody unless, somebody gets traded or retires. But I I think that Bouchard's 5-on-5 is the key for the team. They're going to do well on the power play anyway. I like him on the power play, but he's got some things to learn. I like him along the line with the puck. He needs to get pucks through a little better when he's shooting them, although when he does, good things happen. I like him a lot. I don't think he's vital to the power play. And I think that although I know why they made the Barry deal last year, it is going to cost them some money because Bouchard became more of a feature player. I like him a ton. But as you said earlier, if you're making a list of the important players on the Oilers power play, he's not.
Yeah. And arguably, there's 3 guys on that power play, and then the rest are extras.
Well, it was good when Alex Chason was the net front guy.
Yeah.
It was good when Jesse Puljujarvi or Kyle Yamamoto or whoever was the net front guy. James Neal. But Hyman's certainly taken it up that other level, and Bouchard may well be capable of doing that in the defense. Let's give credit where due. He didn't exactly take over from a slouch in Tyson Barrie, who did a real good job on that PV. They were in the number 1 spot before Bouchard ever took over on the point. And Barrie put up good numbers in his time here, and then he got good value when he was traded. So that was one contract that worked out pretty okay for the Oilers. And the thing that he had going in the playoffs, it was just ridiculous. The power play points that he was somehow able to record. 15 power play points. He was on the ice for 17 goals, and he had 15 points. His individual points percentage was like 88%. And McDavid had 12, right? Power play points, and he was second in the league, and Bouchard was first in the league, and he only played 2 rounds of playoffs with 15 points. But at even strength, he was like 2 points. And overall, he was like -4. I think pretty close to just even at even strength. So all the damage that he did in the playoffs, all of it was on the power play, which is great for the power play. But he's still got other things that I think he can improve on in his game.
What did his defensive numbers end up on at I think they went up as Ekholm came on board. So obviously, that's going to be a plus for him. He did look definitely, and I know the two of you are big on the numbers. I go way more on the eye test probably, but he looked calmer. It seemed Ekholm had the same effect that Duncan Keith had on Bouchard, which was to give him some insulation. What were the numbers given the Ekholm era of last year versus not? Do you know offhand?
I know that Ryan Murray and Bouchard did not work out early on, and I know that I thought Broberg played very well, quite frankly, with Bouchard, but it was third pair. And then I think we have to be realistic about the Ekholm Bouchard pairing. I think they're going to be fine. I would run them next year, but they were on a world-class heater, and the entire team was just smoking hot. And so the expectations can't be that. They just can't.
Ekholm's not a point-a-game player.
Yeah, exactly. And they just everything was working, and it was dynamite. And that you're going to get 20 games runs like that, and they did, and they damn near caught the Golden Knights, and that might have been key to winning the Stanley. So I think the problem with Bouchard is that defensively he's always going to need a strong hand on the other side. And I love his puck moving. I love his passing. And I do think that as he matures, he'll be even more dangerous in those areas. But I think I'd love to move Ekholm to Broberg or Ekholm to whomever, but I think that Ekholm Bouchard is going to be one of the co-number one pairings. And it's too bad because Ekholm is so valuable. He could mentor somebody else if Bouchard had the ability to move higher up alone.
Yeah. So we got Crosby in the chat. Mike Crosby says, any chance you'd run Ekholm with Broberg instead and put Nurse with Bouchard? Obviously, that's leaving CC out of the mix. Is that something any of you guys would consider?
Cult of Hockey went over that on one of their podcasts. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, in theory, Broberg is capable of playing both sides. I think Nurse is as well, but I would like Broberg with Ekholm. I mean, that would be a wonderful opportunity for him.
Mm-hmm.
Broberg was the one guy who kind of lost out after that trade last year. I mean, Bouchard got that wonderful opportunity on the right side because all of a sudden there was one less right guy, and he was sort of logical one man to step up into the second pairing and get the new guy that came in. Well, Broberg found himself going from the third pairing to the fourth on the left side behind three big-time minute munchers in Nurse, Ekholm, and Kulak. All of them, capable of putting in pretty significant minutes. And so it would be nice to see him benefit from his fellow Swede on the D. It'd be kind of fun to watch. That said, when you look at how they were used, Ekholm saw some pretty tough competition, and Broberg was heavily sheltered last year. In fact, all of the young guys were quite heavily sheltered, including Bouchard right up to that, the time of the trade. The four young defensemen they had, including Desharnais, Niemelainen, Broberg, and Bouchard, were all lagging way below the veterans in terms of playing tough minutes against top competition. And so that's smart coaching, but you kind of wonder, how do you then turn around a guy who's only played mostly third pairing comp and say, we want to just drop you, airlift you right into our second pairing.
Yeah.
Might work, might not work. So I don't know how much chances they want to take. But it's a very interesting, intriguing even idea of what they might try.
Well, maybe they go 11-7 and Bouchard's just a power play specialist.
Marc-Andre Bergeron.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Sorry. Torrey Krug. Yeah. Well, that's a better version.
Do the Oilers go 11-7 again this year for most of the year?
I think a lot of it depends on who the center is going to be on the fourth line.
Yeah.
We've only got 11
You have to
forwards.
have score up.
Yeah. Well, that's a fair statement too.
If they go 12-7 on the roster, which remains quite possible, then basically Jay Woodcroft's got two choices every game. He can go 12-6 or 11-7. That's all he can do. He's got one extra player. But if someone's sick or banged up and has to miss a game, it might be a forward, it might be a D-man. But whichever way he has to adjust, this team is quite experienced at going that way. 11-7 won't catch anybody sort of off guard anymore. Certainly on the Oilers. Hopefully it still works against opposition from time to time, that you get a good matchup out of it. But the Oilers coaches, Woodcroft and Manson, are well versed in 11-7, and I think they've primarily used it to advantage over the time they've been here.
Yeah,
they can hide players. When it's 11-7, you can hide Broberg, and sometimes they would hide Desharnais. But Desharnais, he is an interesting guy because he's got great wingspan. His numbers were ridiculous. Can I ask Bruce a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I've been looking at Desharnais, and I really like him, but he had, his expected goals are at one level. I think I can't remember, but they're good. But his actual goal share is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
How much regression do you see in that player?
Some. I also expect to see some progression. So there's going to be some. I think he's going to improve, but his results might kind of not. But they might not fall as much as you might expect from regression to the meat, because I think the player himself is going to keep take it up a level. But I still see him as definitely all third pairing, as kind of 6-7, and I don't mind him at all in that role.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Desharnais. I think I'm with you there, Bruce. I can't see him regressing. To be fair, like a ton, just given the fact that I think he developed nicely. He had some like I love the way he learned from his mistakes in the playoffs. Yeah, to me that was the sign of a player that's got some potential. Yeah, my concern really is, if you're talking about progressions and regressions, is, if we get CC back to where we hope he is, where like Bruce, you and I had this conversation last time you were on. This Broberg thing that we keep talking about is a problem in my mind. And Ken Hall, it's a problem so much so that Ken Holland brought it up.
Yeah.
How do you have a guy like that on your team that the numbers all indicate he's going to be a hell of a defenseman? But what are we going to play him 6 or 7 minutes a night as a seventh guy? I just don't understand how this is all going to play out.
Well, as long as he keeps getting 60% of the goals and shots, I'd rather he played more given the results he's been getting. But I mean, they really have sheltered him to the point that his on ice results look good. And I did want to respond to something that Alan said before he inconveniently asked me a question, which is the sheltering and the hiding of Broberg and other players. And one of the really brilliant gambits that Woodcroft pulled off, especially later in the year, was when he had the 11-7, and let's say the two extra forwards were Ryan and Costin, and the extra D-man was Broberg. Well, essentially, he used them as a set, not quite a line, but he put the three of them all out there on the ice at the same time. That when the fourth line, or the runt line was on the ice with just two players, the third guy would be McDavid or Draisaitl, and then Broberg would go out as the seventh defenseman, and his partner might be Ekholm, or it might be Nurse, or it might be somebody pretty darn good. Not just he's not just going out there playing only with the third pairing D man, just like Ryan and Costin would get their chances with the big guys. And that was a pretty nifty move, because usually it meant they were out against weaker opponents because of who they were, and they would be in the upper hand because they got McDavid, right? That's a game changer. So there was some really crafty maneuvering in that department, and I kept noticing, hey, look at that, Broberg's out there with the boys again on the fourth line. That can't be an accident. And sure enough, at the end of the night, you see he played more with the fourth line guys than with anybody else, and the fourth line wasn't even a full line. It was just two players, but Broberg was like he was attached to them at the hip, and it was some smart coaching, because they did get good results in those deployments.
Yeah,
I think also that the thing, there's so much we don't know, and we acknowledge it, but that's all we can do. Injuries being an example, and with Broberg, last year, boys, he hurt himself. I think he cut himself, and he also had trained wrong. I remember Bob Stauffer mentioning it several times.
Yeah,
came in heavy.
That he looks, what did he, top heavy or some
Came
damn
in
thing?
heavy, yeah.
Right. And I think that we, in our mind's eye, we acknowledge that. And because we can't project it accurately, we may just not value it at all. And I think that would be a mistake. I'll be interested in seeing, I know that Bourgault and Lavoie are coming in, in good shape, because that's been written about, and it always is, going back to God knows who. But Broberg's the guy I want to see. I want to see, if he trained differently, stay out of the damn kitchen, kid, that sort of thing. Because I think as much as we talk about how much we like Kulak and how much we like Desharnais, Broberg is a top 10 pick. He should be able to zoom past these guys at some point.
Oh, and when he's been healthy, at any level, he's looked amazing, right? I mean, when he was healthy playing in the World Juniors, he looked amazing. I mean, he was the
In
guy.
the World
I-
Juniors,
you
he
know,
was a bit of a man amongst boys too. I mean, the guy was
Yeah.
chiseled out of Swedish
He
stone.
was great at the Halinka too. Bruce will remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I saw him as a 17-year-old at the first Linka Gretzky here in Edmonton,
I watched that
and
too.
he was quite dominant.
Yeah.
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 Well, I just think that we're not, and we can't. It's not our fault, but you can't, because you can't say, "Oh, it'll be great because I know this." But
Yeah.
those are two little arrows in his favor that we can't count on, but we can observe when he gets here.
Yeah, for sure. They're like I just kind of think, what if, you know, the big challenge maybe that I see as well is, what if there's a guy in the forward group though that presents themselves as a viable option in training camp that you can't go 11-7. Then you got to, and again, there's this Broberg problem just sits there to me as being, you know, and I keep sitting on it because Ken Holland even brought it up, and so, you know, it's obviously something they're thinking about. But I just think about this, you know, we talk 11-7 as being an easy way to go for the same reason that Dash said, well, that's kind of what you got right now. You've got 11-7. That's an easy choice. But if somebody comes up that maybe makes a case to be that 12th forward, then you got another challenge. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on from this. I love it, but we've got you know,
You're talking
we've
about
got
Dylan Holloway, aren't you?
well, I mean Holloway, you know, maybe.
I think he's actually
Who's the
11th.
fourth line
I think
center?
he's the 11th forward.
Like,
So
that's what I want to know. Is like Lane Peterson's the guy now. If he's the guy, he's probably you probably are 11-7. He you know, he's an easy guy to send out. I just wonder about, you know, maybe it's PTOs, maybe it's not a contract, but you know, they could sign somebody for $775, and there are some people out there.
But Al, who's a center that you'd want on our fourth line that could come in as a PTO?
There's nothing wrong with Suter. He's not a bad player at all.
He's soft.
Well, Lane Peterson is not.
yeah,
You know, he's
said.
not going to lift you over. You know,
No, you're right.
and I like Lane Peterson, but and Devon Shore had a great year last year, but I understand they're not going to bring him back. But he played as well as Devon Shore can, I think. But I think right now the decision's easy because they just don't have an obvious fourth line center unless they move Derek Ryan over, and he has played center. And Janmark, although I mean he takes faceoffs, I don't know if he's a center. But I think there's a hole there, and I would not be surprised if we see a couple of PTOs and maybe a contract instead of a PTO, because as you say, you know, there's competition there, but I don't really see the competition there. I see Lane Peterson as being the last.
Mhm.
Yeah,
me too.
I don't think right now there is, right? And I think that's,
I'm not sure they signed another pro contract. I think there's a few PTOs coming, and once Bouchard signed, that's it.
they've got room.
yeah. Well,
I'm
they've
just
got
glad
room
we're
for
talking about
$775,000 contracts, or 10, I guess, if they signed that up to the 50-man
Yeah.
limit. There's only going to be a couple of them that are on the team, so
Mhm.
some folks seem to see it as they got this much cap room, they can't sign anybody at all. You can sign alternatives. What you can't do is pay extra money over and above the minimum to pretty much anyone.
Yeah, lots of questions going in.
They could also send Broberg down, guys. I mean, I know they won't, but they could. If the concern is playing time, you could send him down.
Could,
Run the roster, quantify his bonuses first, though. You got to do that.
Darnell possibly do a Strudwick and play wing.
Well, nobody plays swing like Strudwick. Come on now.
Well played, Michael.
Yeah. All right. We've got a couple of headlines to do, and then we'll close it down for the night. I think we had, you know, all of the. It's getting late over there in Edmonton. It's getting late here in Halifax a little bit.
Bladder's filling up, buddy.
Bladder's filling up. You know, who knows who could pop by
This is
Bruce's door at the back.
This is standard third period Oilers game for you, though, isn't it, Michael?
This is
Yeah.
a typical third period. Yeah, for me.
1:30 in the morning.
Be a
The next-
fantastic Oilers live when Lowetide can't get to his own toilet and knocks on Bruce's door behind him there.
That would be world class stuff, right? If I was in any way able to get there in time, I'd do it.
It would be. It would probably. This would be a viral show for sure if that happened.
Yeah.
We get there. We've got 2 articles tonight. One from each of these fine gentlemen. We're going to start
Not
with
me.
That's right. Not named Dash. We're going to start with one. It's the QR code's up in the top left. You can find it at lowetide.ca. Title is Petri Dish. Alan, do you want to just kind of give us a quick summary of this, and then we'll have a quick discussion about it?
Well, there's a couple of things in there about, and we've gone over a few of them. I argued that there's a sense among some Oiler fans that Broberg is somehow behind or off the pace, or for a number, whatever it was, 8 or 9 pick. And certainly I think that the Oilers reached for him. They wanted a defenseman. Seider has turned out really well. And my argument is that Broberg is a player who, if you're worried about him ever playing top 4, I think that's a little early to get upset about. And I think that we have to watch this play out. And at some level, we sit and we talk all summer about, how does Broberg get in the lineup? And sure as hell, an injury will occur, and that's going to be the issue. And on the other end of it, the article basically talked about Darnell, Nurse at the top end and Ekholm at the top end, and that left side of the defense being a blessing because we don't know about CC, and Broberg could move over, and Bouchard is good, but he's young, and Desharnais is 27, and I don't think, does he have 50 games in the NHL? I don't think he does yet. So
36.
yeah. So I think that we're spending the spring and the summer talking about what Broberg isn't, but I think he is going to be more substantial than our mind's eye has him when the fall comes.
Excellent. Yeah. Again, we're talking about at lowetide.ca. Title name is Petri Dish. Bruce, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, you'd like him to be further along by now for sure, but the fact is he's still on his ELC. And for me, that's kind of the boundary of he's still a young player, needs time. Is he showing progress? Yes. Is it as fast as we would like? No. Does he have tools? Yes. He is a very finely tooled player. And, there's a lot going on. I'm looking forward to the day they unleash him a little bit and don't just have him hanging back, but start to go with the offensive instincts because he's very capable of jumping up into the play and making stuff happen. Some ways he's got some things in common with Darnell Nurse in terms of his, he doesn't have the hard edge to his game, obviously, but in terms of his sort of young colt willing to just take off and create chaos in the good parts of the ice, and I think he's got that in his game, and Nurse has developed that part of his game.
Yeah. Dash, your thoughts?
Ultimately, just really impressed that you can use the word innocuous and vitriolic in the same sentence. That was
That's good.
pretty much my highlight of there. But what can I say that wasn't already said? I think ultimately Broberg hasn't advanced as much as maybe some of us would like. That said, he wasn't Maurice Seider. He wasn't the first defenseman picked, right? There's a reason that Seider went ahead of him. And that's because Broberg was probably going to take a little longer. And here we are. Ultimately, it's tough to get the time you need to be the defenseman we want him to be when we're in win now mode. So ultimately, I love the positivity that Mr. Mitchell put behind the article, and that's there's hope, I think. And maybe one of the greatest things I saw in there was from the personal news section where you said you'll likely be in a microphone again by September. So that's great news for a lot of people.
it might be a Mr. Microphone at my house. So,
Yeah,
I'll take it.
go.
well,
I'll take
I
Okay.
it.
got a
there.
microphone right now.
so I'll talk about this for a second. The one thing that we've talked a little bit about Broberg tonight, obviously, because it's a big question mark. What I'm curious about is when we get down to the deadline, what happens, and I think a lot of that'll have to do with what we see from Broberg going into that part of the season, right? Because you can't. I just think with the kind of defensive core we have, he might be the chip if he's just not good enough to kind of stick where we need him to stick, right? That's possible because he's got, everybody should know, any hockey person should know that he's got what it takes to be a good defenseman. Whether that shows in this Oilers team is another thing. And Alan, I love what you said about Nurse there, and just the facts about his contract, and I'm a big Darnell Nurse fan. I mean, I'll never figure out, why Oilers fans are so negative. I love, what was his comment like? If he made a comment there about if you had a flat tire or whatever.
It gets blamed for everything from goal against to traffic
That's
on
right.
Stony Plain Road.
Stony Plain Road, yeah. So and so if you don't think these guys are reading this stuff, they are.
Yeah. And if you don't think they're not sensitive to it, they should be above it. I mean, the people that are freaking tagging them in tweets and stuff, I mean, that's one thing, but it just sometimes the barrage of constant criticism that's going to get through to a guy, and a lot of it's resentment, flat out resentment over the amount, I mean, what it means to the Oilers competitively, of course, being a big part of that, and he's viewed now as being overpaid. Some people think very badly overpaid. I think those people they see the mistakes and they don't see the positive things, or they take them for granted. I don't know what it is that you turn on a guy and you see every little thing he does wrong, and yet in there he's also doing some pretty good things. And I mean, Nurse does a lot of pretty good things. He wins a lot of races. He wins a lot of puck battles. He has his teammates' backs. Like,
it's in the top 10 in the league,
like on your team. Yeah, I mean, if he was playing in Columbus or Washington, something, seeing him from a distance, a lot of people are saying, geez, we need a guy just like that. We should try and get that guy. But when you see him here, you see all 82 of his games, and you see other guys come through and they play 2 or 3 or 4 games against the Oilers all year. If you're an Oilers fan, Darnell Nurse is going to make a lot more mistakes than Alec Pietrangelo, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's just a mathematical certainty. I mean, he probably does make more mistakes than Alec Pietrangelo, and that might have been a bad example, but you know what I mean. If you focus only on mistakes, and there are people that do it, and frankly, it drives me nuts. All players make mistakes. All players do some good things. The ratio of good to bad changes from player to player, but it's not like he's a secret agent for the other team.
I feel like anybody passing judgment anybody passing judgment and sentencing on Darnell Nurse just doesn't have the whole story. Ultimately, you've got to take everything into account, and the fact that he played for our team well above his salary for years, taking a haircut at value contract after value contract. Meanwhile, he's showing up top 10 in the league in almost every 5-on-5 category. In fact, go through the last 5 years in the NHL and add up every 5-on-5 category. Nurse is still in the top 10 in a lot of those categories. It's not his fault. Jones, Werenski, and McCovey, or who was it? McCoy, McAvoy, sorry, and Heiskanen all got $9 million right before Nurse did.
The other thing is that and that's why I think that the Puck IQ gents have done such a great job, is if you go to Puck IQ and you look at the minutes he's playing against elites, it's enormous, and it has been for some time. And now Ekholm is here, and that's great. But back when Klefbom and Nurse were coming up, there was support there, and they, Bruce had an article not long ago about how many times they tried to replace Kleckbaum, and I think they finally have it with Ekholm. But Darnell Nurse has been kind of a stone alone out there against the elite competition, to the point where when Woodcroft got here in the first year he was coach, when he arrived like February 11th or whatever, he sort of turned Nurse Cece into super top 2 pairings, and they just ran the hell out of him. And he's such a horse, he can do it. But I think for some reason those things get overlooked, and I think that at the end of the line here, Darnell Nurse is going to be a guy that I hope they win a Stanley Cup with him as a big part of it, because I think that at that point he'll probably start getting the credit he richly deserves.
Yeah. So there's 2 things. Sorry. Go ahead, Bruce.
I was just going to say the other thing that impressed me about his 42-minute interview, where he finally, made that one volatile comment around the 40-minute mark, was all that he does. This guy, like, he's he's taking courses during the season. He's still, filling out his university degree. He's planning for life after hockey. He takes on the road. He'll do, his coursework while he's on the road. But also, the stuff that he's done for our community. I mean, free play for kids. What's not to like about a name like Free Play for Kids, where they get some equipment and maybe some court or ice time for mainly immigrant kids, he said, to, just get a chance, get a running start at, the Canadian culture. Like, come on in. It's great. And it's good that he's up there holding the ball for that and leading the charge. And at the same time, also sponsoring a scholarship program where he himself chooses from a short list, but he himself goes through every person on the short list. And he said there were 2 or 3 of the toughest nights of the year for him, deciding, I think, which 2 out of the 5 would get the scholarship from his foundation this year. I mean, he's gotten a lot of money, but he's putting at least some of it in pretty good places. And how about a little credit for that?
Yeah. The quality of the human.
He's a hell of a citizen.
Is
well
good.
said, Bruce.
And
overachiever.
I'll just say 2 quick
So
things
I
on
see.
this one before we move on to the last article of the night, and then call it a night. I always think about Nurse, like you talked about it. They ran him as a 1 and 2. Tell me a guy in the league that plays that many minutes where he won't have a couple hiccups, just percentage wise. I mean, and to focus on a couple hiccups in terms of playing that many minutes is pretty tough criticism to take. And then the second thing I want to say is, Lowetide, that's got to be the most Edmonton fan type of story I've ever read. Where you're defending not just Darnell Nurse, but talking about Broberg going to be these are. People still love you, but the Twitter crowds are probably, some of them probably threw up today when they read that. And
I can tell you, I'm one of those too. I'll go to bat when there's an Oiler that I think is taking an undue beating, whether it's from fans of other teams, in which case they get it, or fans of our own team turning on our own players. And I sort of become it feels like
Ruthless,
one man.
right?
Fan club for Zach Startini, Ryan Jones, or Chris Russell. All of them took heaps of shit while they were in this town, playing their asses off for the Edmonton Oilers. And at a certain point, that pisses me off. And pardon the language, but that does, giving it everything you got. Well, it might not be good enough, and it might, you might need to make a change over time. Cropping all over the players doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not a good
No,
look.
100% agree. I love it, and I thank you guys for doing those types of things. We're gonna finish off with this last one, which is in the same vein. This is a true Bruce McCurdy type of article right here. Title of it is Vegas Golden Knights, Edmonton Oilers have built contenders by shopping in different aisles. Bruce, you want to just give us a summary and we'll have a quick discussion?
Yeah, sure. Over the last 4 seasons now, during the playoffs, or this year just after the playoffs, I've done comparisons between the Oilers and how their roster was constructed versus the final contenders. One year I did the Final Four. Another year I did the Stanley Cup finalists. This year I just looked at at Vegas. Last year I did a Edmonton versus Colorado comp when their series was just getting started on the same vein. And the idea is just, where do these teams get the guys that are making them competitive, and what are they doing different maybe that Oilers aren't doing? And each one is different, you know. I mean, Tampa Bay won 2 cups, and what I do is I look at players drafted in the first round, players drafted on day 2, anywhere between rounds 2 and 7. Players like what I call freebies, picked up on the open market as, you know, undrafted free agents, signed to entry level contracts, or players picked off of waivers. And a big one, of course, is trades. And in the case of Tampa Bay, they built a lot of their team by absolutely crushing it out of the park on day 2 of the draft and picking up a bunch of guys like, you know, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Anthony Cirelli, you know, really good, strong players, Andre Palat, Alex Kaloran. I mean, a lot of them. And more that they picked up as unsigned players, you know, Yanni Gord and Tyler Johnson, that they just picked off the scrap heap at age 22. And then Colorado's team was done differently. They too had some fine players that they picked in the first round, but not a single player on their team that they drafted below the first round. Like, even worse than the Oilers, and yet they won the Stanley Cup. So they made that work for them. And then to compare to this year's team, Vegas, and it's almost impossible to compare because Vegas built their team through the draft, all right, but it was the expansion draft and not the regular, you know, young players draft. But they came in with exceptionally good terms under the most recent expansion, and some very, very sharp management from George McPhee, who used his position. You know, there was only one team coming in, so they were going to get their player off of each team. It wasn't like they were competing with some other expansion team and they didn't know what they were going to get. They could pick their whole team in advance of the draft because they knew who was available, but also they were working the phones and finding out, you know, Florida, we're really looking hard at that Alex Petrovich guy. You know, maybe you want to shake someone else free. They wound up getting Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault, the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, by the way, both from Florida Panthers. And both guys have been on their team now for 6 years. They dispatched Riley Smith at the end of this summer. And it was just the way they went about it. And then the draft has been useless to them. They have one player on their team that they picked, period. Not just one player after the first round. It is that guy, Nicholas Haig. He was picked 34th overall. They don't have a single first round pick of their own on their team. They won the Stanley Cup. I mean, I dare you to find another team anytime in the last, well, maybe ever since the draft started, that had no first rounders of their own on it. But that's how Vegas does. So what I'm learning from this is that, I mean, this was already known and, you know, sort of a truism. There are many different ways to win. And so what you don't have to be is perfect, right? You don't have to be, like, nobody's perfect. Julien Brisebois was almost perfect. But there's different ways of doing business. So my comparison of the Oilers with all their first round picks, I mean, the Oilers had Nugent Hopkins, Nurse, Draisaitl, McDavid, Puljujarvi before Las Vegas had a team. So how do you even compare that? So that, you know, we're really looking at apples and pineapples, as I called it. So ultimately what I'm going to do, and I've been angling towards doing something like this for a long time since I got into this method. And the article I was working on today that was put off by the McLeod News, was coming soon, is a comparison of the real Edmonton Oilers to the real Las Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm going to compare the two teams that won the Stanley Cup in their 6th year of existence, and go through how they each benefited from an expansion draft. Their start is kind of the same, but they really morphed into different directions. And that little bit of research has been quite fascinating. I hope people enjoy reading it. I've loved doing the research on it.
Yeah,
I love everything you two write.
Thank you.
No, I was, you know, this was a great article. I think that piece about the drafted players with Vegas, I mean, that kind of, I've never really broken it down or thought about it, and that, you know, threw me for a loop. What I do love though is the little bite in there towards Vegas about the Oilers having been the fastest to win the cup. I appreciate that.
Taking a little bit too much talk from general direction of Vegas. It's not the worst idea to throw some back at it. Like, this was way before your time, fellas. But it's just saying, they're not the best new team in the history of the National Hockey League.
Yeah. So, would you suggest, after having researched this, that both McPhee and McCrimmon have very much the same style at the end? I mean, that's because it's a tough one, right? I mean, obviously, in terms of maybe their PR capabilities, they're a little bit different. But but the way they trade, the way they build the roster, do you see some similarities there?
Well, McCrimmon, to me, maybe Alan is off on mute. McCrimmon, to me, is a little more cutthroat. I mean, he dealt Marc-Andre Fleury for nothing. Just take the contract, be gone. Somebody wants this contract, out you go. He basically traded Max Pacioretty for nothing.
Yeah.
Threw in another player and sort of low-level player for reasons unknown. But it's basically take the contract and we love you, Max, but we can use this cap space better. We like you, Marc-Andre, but 7.5 is a lot for a goalie. Maybe Alex Pietrangelo's out there on the market, or whoever it was that year, Eichel. And what they've done is a lot of transactions with big money contracts,
Stashed
coming and
him.
going. They paid for Stone, they paid for Eichel in trades. They got Pacioretty in a big trade and gave him away for nothing. I mean, they lost Nick Suzuki and a couple of picks to get Pacioretty, but they're quite cold-blooded about it. Whereas here in Edmonton, it seems like the approach, it's not just the team, it's the fans. Like they want to build and just keep. I mean, at one point earlier this year, the Oilers had their last 10 consecutive first-round draft choices, all under contract.
I think I heard Alan playing some chords in the background there. You got the guitar.
I have to say, I've been listening to this. Bruce really laid it out really well there.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the respective team building, and I think that Edmonton, the 79 through 84 teams, they did. I mean, I think that's the most brilliant use of the entry draft we've ever seen. But as Bruce said, the expansion draft was set up in a way. You can go back and look at the poor Washington Capitals and the Kansas City Scouts didn't have anybody to draft, but the Vegas Golden Knights were given an enormous advantage, and full credit, they took advantage of it, and they won their Stanley. But that was a purchase of a golden card by Vegas Golden Knights, and not to bitch and moan, but if you're an Oiler fan, the two expansion teams that have had the best opportunity to get good in a hurry are both in the Pacific Division.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam Pollock wouldn't have it any other way, Alan.
Yeah.
I think he got the Capitals and the Islanders in his division when they first came in, and I think he got the Sabres and the Canucks in the same draft because they moved Chicago to the west and they brought in both Buffalo and Vancouver. I mean, Vancouver in the east. I mean, this is how NHL can you get, right? Anyway. I'm just seeing on our screen here, some stranger says Bruce Cassidy gets no credit for the cup win, and I have to respond. He very definitely deserves a lot of credit for the cup win, and he sometimes is over. I mean, I've been looking at roster construction, so specifically more at the GM than the coach. But this particular coach, he came in and did a fantastic job in Vegas, and I'd say to me, he won the head-to-head coaching showdown in the Edmonton series for sure.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's hope Woodcroft can learn from those those mistakes. I mean, the one thing we love about Woodcroft, right, is he seems to be the kind of guy that studies every move that he's made and is willing to move on from that. Guys, I think I appreciate you spending some time with us tonight. I know it's getting late even in Edmonton. You know what time it is here in Halifax, but I can
+3.
tell. I can tell the sun's down just by looking out Bruce's window there. So
Yeah, it's. I think I saw a skip the dishes guy about 2 minutes
that's right.
ago.
Yeah, he's waiting outside.
It's, I think Bruce owes him money. I don't know, but might want to get on that.
So I'm going to do a quick round the horn. I'll start. I'll go with Dash. Then we'll go to you, Bruce, and Alan. The way we typically do it here on Oilers Live is you get the last word. Everybody else gets thrown on mute, which means you can say whatever you want. It's not CRTC or anything like that. It's not going to shut us down yet. Yeah, and
you can even do a Bruce McCurdy impression.
That's right. You can do whatever you want.
Okay,
Oh, no.
I'm in.
and then you end the show by saying good night, and that's when I know to put the closing credits on. So I'll start. Again, thank you guys for joining the show tonight. It was great. Continue to love the content you guys are putting out, and I think and I've said it when I've had you guys on the show before. Thank you on behalf of anybody that's into sports and sports media. We we live for this content, and we love to talk about the Oilers and talk about what's going on around the league. So thank you for doing that. I know it has to be a passion to be done well. So, and I can tell for you guys, it is a passion for sure. There are some exciting things happening. The Heavy Hockey Showdown, which is in support of the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton. Please, if you're listening to this, whether it's on the recording or if you're listening to it live right now, make sure you check out. They go by SACE. You can find them at sace.ca. They could use all the support that you're willing to give them. We do. Last year, we've done a charity hockey game every year. Last year, we've chosen SACE as our charity of choice, and we're going to continue to do that moving forward because they need it. They need the help, and they just do amazing work. Mary Jane and the whole team there. Absolutely love them and what they do. We have set the date for February 25th in Edmonton. It's a Sunday. That's going to be when the hockey game happens. The night before is the Battle of Alberta, if we can still call it a battle.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'll be at the game with a whole bunch of our heavy hockey cohort. So, try to make that game. Also put it in your calendars for February 25th. Information about registration and all of that will come out as soon as we're there. We've got a great group committee: Jacqueline, Dash, Lori, Pam, and just a great team putting that together as we do every year. Jeff, yeah, and it's as I said, it is booked. We've booked the ice at Downtown Community Center, so that's great. Make sure you check out heavyhockey.com. There's 11 contributors now for heavyhockey.com. In fact, our friend Bruce here has done a couple of great articles himself, and we thank you for that. It's these guys, they get paid a ton of money to write these articles. They're laughing right now. I tell them every week you get 100% raise. But no, it's it's a bunch of fans of the game of hockey, and they put their time in. They love to do it. It's a passion for them. It's a passion for us to do these podcasts. So all I ask is that check out the site heavyhockey.com. And thank you to Dash for joining me week after week and reaching out to Bruce and Lowetide and just being here, and a good friend.
And JMO, he unfortunately had to take a last minute.
That's right. Yeah, we'll get him back.
he-
Everybody knows Jim was
He
a
was
great
in
guy too.
clutch, but he wanted to be here, and he
Yeah.
is a great guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. He had to strike like a mongoose elsewhere.
That's right. So anyway, that's
He had a shift at the
the
Piggly
Piggly
Wiggly.
Wiggly. We never did get in.
We never did uncover
Yeah.
that, did we?
I
Or what Dave Jameson does behind the Piggly Wiggly.
Life after radio.
I did go down a rabbit hole on the Piggly Wiggly last night. Anyway, we're not going to get there. The show could have got off the rails at some point tonight. I'll pass it off to Dash. Dash, last words.
Hey, I'll keep it brief because anybody listening wants to hear these two guys' voice and not mine at this point in time. But I moved to Edmonton in August of 2005, and I've been listening to the radio here for 18 years, whether it goes back to when Spectre was on 1260 and Bryn and Robin. And, there's just been so many great guys through the years that I never would have thought at this point in time I'd be sitting here talking to you guys. And it's an absolute honor. I think you guys are two of the hardest working people in all of media. Your articles are... That's BS, Bruce, because it's so obvious that the work goes into it. The ideas, they're unique, they're distinctive, they're peculiar, and I love it. You guys are probably two of the hardest working writers I think I've ever seen, and as a result, that's not just me pandering. The articles speak for themselves. I really do believe that. So all that said, it's just an honor to be on here with you guys. It's an honor to listen to you talk to us and answer our questions. So I'll pass it off to Bruce so he can pass it off to Al. And just thanks a lot. I miss your guys' voices.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, I sure miss Alan's voice. And this is the part that bugs me, when a business closes or something, that's one thing. When a radio station shuts down, they're taking friends out of your home, right? That you willingly invite into your home several days a week in some cases.
Well said.
And in Alan's case, and the show that he ran for however many years on TSN, basically it's been the soundtrack to most of the 15 years that I've been a blogger, and I got a lot of information that I find myself lost at sea some of these times. Oh, the Oilers did something where I used to get it on the radio within a few minutes of it happening. That's not happening, and then there's a 2-hour show focused in the middle of the day, which may or may not be at a convenient time, but you don't have this constant. At least not at this time, and I guess there are plans in the works. We've been hearing things from Nielsen and Lieutenant Eric and so on, and whispers about other eminences like Alan that might wind up in a new situation where we can again access their voice. And I can't wait. Like I say, I've been lost at sea without that. And I also want to commend you guys for your charity work on behalf of Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton. I know the ladies of Oilers Twitter have identified the same charity for their ladies' night that I think came just a few days after your game this year.
Correct.
And to get the 1-2 of sort of the two different groups of great people focusing on the same charity kind of sort of says, oh, that charity must be a good one. Certainly, of what I've read of it, it's impressive, and it needs the help, as you guys say. So thank you for stepping up and being there and getting that word out there. It's not always the easiest type of charity to promote, but it needs to be done. So good on you. And otherwise, I'll just say, 60 years for me as a fan now, 15 as a blogger. So when I call myself a fan blogger, that's what I am, and in that order. I was a fan of this game for 45 years before people like Alan Mitchell and Tyler Dello and Vic Ferrari and other local luminaries that sort of paved the way to the whole blogging community just threw me in 08 and been going strong.
By the faithful, for the faithful.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, and David Staples as well. It's been doing this blog that I've belonged to now for 13 years. Trying to parse the game in different ways and coming up with some interesting viewpoints. And that's what we're all trying to do, I think, in one way or another. And it's wonderful to be part of that community. And with that, I will pass off to local blogging legend Al Mitchell for the last
Right
word.
on.
Well,
And Al, can you please include something on Bill Lee, Steve Rogers, or some sort of tangent about what's wrong with baseball as your closing
Ronnie
remarks?
Scott.
well,
Maybe
I-
mention
I-
Maidstone because I missed this, man.
I'm loving the baseball season this year. I'm not loving the Jays lately, but mostly because of pitching. If Buck builds up a starter in the first inning one more time and they give up 5 runs, I'm going to lose it. But I think they'll be okay for the playoffs. I don't know about any deep postseason run. As far as the Expos are concerned, Warren Cromartie promised me 4 or 5 years ago that he was going to bring the Expos back, and we're all going to go and party big time when that happens. Really quickly, boys, everybody's mentioned the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton. I don't know a tremendous amount. I have been touched by the people involved, and they're all great people. And I also know that in the community that I live in during the pandemic, there was a lot going on that really is still being felt, and hurt is being felt because that was a tough time for everybody. And so if you can't, because they're not an organization that has deep roots anywhere, but they're vital and they need to build those deep roots. So if you can help, make sure you do. Also, for fans, please enjoy this. I don't know if they're going to win a Stanley Cup this year, but the Edmonton Oilers are an absolute force. Connor McDavid is worth every minute you spend watching him, either live or on television. Enjoy that great hockey club. Don't let anybody online make you feel badly about cheering for this team. Losses occur no matter how good they are. If they don't win the Stanley Cup, it'll be a damn shame. But if they do, make sure that you're there to enjoy it. Don't talk the next day about, they should have won 3. Please enjoy the experience. Winning a Stanley Cup as a fan is the most special thing I've ever experienced. And I hope that you don't let anybody take that away from you. Enjoy the game. Enjoy this team. They are special, I promise you. And that's all I've got to say. Enjoy your night. I enjoyed this, boys. It was fun.
Oilers Live.